They know that you're one of these very rare people who can see them, so you need to help them.
M. Night Shyamalan's 1999 masterpiece, The Sixth Sense, is a film that fundamentally shifted the landscape of modern cinema. Arriving at the tail end of the 20th century, it delivered a haunting, emotional narrative that left audiences absolutely gasping in theater aisles. Starring Bruce Willis as the melancholic child psychologist Dr. Malcolm Crowe and Haley Joel Osment as the deeply troubled young boy Cole Sear, the film wove a delicate tapestry of grief, the supernatural, and human connection. It scored 6 Academy Award nominations and cemented its twist ending as one of the most guarded and celebrated secrets in movie history. Yet, beneath the chilling atmosphere and the brilliant narrative structure lies a labyrinth of bizarre production stories, casting what-ifs, and eerie behind-the-scenes coincidences. These are the weird, wonderful, and sometimes deeply unsettling facts about The Sixth Sense that you likely never knew. Number 20. Haley Joel Osment delivered a legendary, career-defining audition. When a 10-year-old Osment walked into the casting office, he did not look like a frightened child, he looked like a young professional. He wore a neatly knotted tie, exuding a bizarrely confident aura for someone his age. After politely asking the room for 30 seconds of absolute silence, he turned to face the wall. When he finally spun around, his cheeks were stained with tears, and he delivered his monologue with a raw, childlike dread that paralyzed everyone in the room. The casting director later admitted to developing an immediate maternal instinct to protect him, while Shyamalan had to physically fight back tears. The search for the character of Cole was cancelled the very next day. No other child could capture that authentic vulnerability. As a personal memento of the moment he knew he had found his star, Shyamalan took the tie Osment wore that day and framed it in a shadow box, where it still hangs in his office. Number 19. Bruce Willis only starred in the film as part of a massive corporate settlement with Disney. A few years prior to the script landing on his desk, Willis was attached to star in and produce a Disney film titled Broadway Brawler. The production was an unmitigated disaster, with Willis making the highly controversial decision to fire the director and much of the crew less than 3 weeks into filming. The chaos forced Disney to scrap the project entirely, resulting in a staggering $17.5 million loss. Disney was not about to just absorb that financial hit, so they mandated that Willis pay them back. To settle the debt, Willis signed a 3-picture contract with the studio, agreeing that a significant portion of his upfront salary from these films would go toward covering the Broadway Brawler losses. The first film in this penance deal was Armageddon, the second was The Sixth Sense, for which he earned a $10 million salary that largely went straight to Disney's coffers, and the third was The Kid. Number 18. Michael Cera auditioned for the role of Cole Sear. It is nearly impossible to imagine anyone other than Osment whispering the film's iconic line, but the casting net was cast wide. A young Michael Cera, who would later find massive fame in projects like Arrested Development and Superbad, was brought in to read for the part of the haunted little boy. However, there was a massive hurdle. Cera was not given the full context of the script. Because the twist was so heavily guarded, the breakdown for the character did not mention ghosts or the supernatural. Believing he was reading for a standard family drama, Cera played the pivotal emotional scenes with an upbeat, overwhelmingly optimistic energy. Years later, he admitted to reading the heartbreaking scene where Cole slides a penny across the table to Dr. Crowe as though he were enthusiastically pitching a magical, happy story, completely missing the dark undertones required for the role. Number 17. The color red was used as a covert, cinematic language. If you rewatch the film, you will notice that the world is largely drained of color, bathed instead in an underexposed, cold, melancholic blue palette. But then, a sudden splash of crimson appears. Shyamalan and his cinematographer, Tak Fujimoto, developed this visual Morse code to signal the intrusion of the ghost world into the living realm. The crimson doorknob, the red balloon, Cole's red sweater at the birthday party. None of these were accidental set dressing choices. To get it exactly right, the production team conducted 15 different dye tests to find the perfect, unsettling shade of red that would aggressively pop against the dreary backgrounds. It was a masterful, subconscious manipulation of the audience, proving that a single color can deliver a more effective chill than any sudden jump scare. Number 16. Bruce Willis was intentionally kept completely in the dark regarding the film's twist. The level of espionage surrounding this script was staggering. Willis was handed a script that was blatantly missing its final 10 pages. The actual ending was stored in a password-protected digital file known strictly as the Vault, accessible only to a tiny handful of essential producers and the director. To ensure no sound engineers or editors accidentally pieced the truth together, Willis was instructed to record completely fake, misleading placeholder lines during automated dialogue replacement sessions. Crew members were strictly forbidden from discussing key visual clues, such as the absence of Willis's wedding ring, anywhere near the actor. When Willis finally sat in a theater to watch the completed film, his genuine shock at the ending was exactly the reaction Shyamalan had engineered from day one. Number 15, the iconic line, "I see dead people," almost didn't survive the editing process. Today, it is one of the most quoted phrases in cinematic history, but before the film premiered, marketing surveys labeled the line as potentially cheesy and melodramatic. Studio executives aggressively pushed Shyamalan to cut it entirely, fearing audiences would laugh at the theater. Shyamalan, recognizing the quiet power of the delivery, refused to back down. In a bizarre and brilliant pitch meeting, he played audio recordings of actual children describing their real-life nightmares in flat, eerie, monotone voices. The executive room fell completely silent. Shyamalan argued that a whispered phrase delivered with absolute seriousness carried far more weight than theatrical yelling. He won the argument, and the line was permanently etched into pop culture. Number 14. Donnie Wahlberg underwent a shocking physical transformation for a mere 10 minutes of screen time. To play Vincent Gray, Malcolm Crowe's deeply traumatized former patient who breaks into his home, Wahlberg wanted to embody absolute psychological ruin. He did not just act the part, he physically destroyed himself. Over the course of just 5 weeks, Wahlberg lost a staggering 43 pounds. To understand the character's isolation, he moved to New York, locked himself in a friend's apartment with no money and no credit cards, and fasted for days on end, surviving only on chewing gum and the occasional vegetable. He later recalled wandering the streets of Philadelphia at night, sleeping in parks, and putting himself through a genuinely crazy psychological ordeal just to ensure that when he stood across from Bruce Willis in that opening scene, he looked like a man who had truly left the realm of the living. Number 13. The script's purchase actually got a studio president fired. When Shyamalan finished the script, he was not a Hollywood heavyweight, but he possessed an immense belief in his work. He attached a highly unusual stipulation to the read. Any studio that wanted to look at the script had to agree up front to a minimum bid of $1 million, and Shyamalan had to be guaranteed the director's chair. David Vogel, the president of production at Walt Disney Studios, read the script and was utterly blown away. Knowing it was a masterpiece, he bypassed corporate approval entirely and bought the rights for $2.25 million to avoid a bidding war. When Disney's higher-ups discovered what he had done, they were furious. They demanded Vogel restructure his contract and surrender some of his presidential power. When he refused, he was unceremoniously fired in July 1999, just weeks before the film was released to massive critical acclaim and hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. Number 12. M. Night Shyamalan's original cameo was incredibly dark and was completely deleted. Shyamalan is famous for his Hitchcockian cameos, and in the final cut of The Sixth Sense, he appears briefly as a pediatrician examining Cole. However, his originally planned cameo was far more intense. Shyamalan wrote and filmed a scene where he played a deeply suicidal pharmacy clerk, visibly breaking down at the counter. The purpose of the scene was to show that Cole's empathetic abilities allowed him to sense the pain of the living, not just the dead. But upon reviewing the footage, Shyamalan realized two things. His own acting was not up to par, and the scene risked pulling focus away from Cole's specific journey. It threatened to change the entire tone of the film, so he made the difficult decision to slice his big moment out of the movie entirely. Number 11. Bruce Willis literally learned how to write with his right hand to protect the twist. In real life, Willis is strictly left-handed. But in the film, Dr. Malcolm Crowe does everything with his right hand. This was not an arbitrary character choice, it was a meticulously planned misdirection. The film's climax relies on the audience realizing that Crowe is no longer alive, a fact visually represented by the absence of his wedding ring on his left hand. Shyamalan and Willis knew that if the action-heavy star naturally reached for objects with his dominant left hand, the camera might accidentally capture his bare ring finger, instantly giving away the twist. To prevent this, Willis spent weeks training himself to perform basic on-screen tasks, like writing notes, with his non-dominant right hand, effectively keeping his left hand out of the frame's focus. Number 10. The clues regarding Malcolm's wardrobe were hiding in plain sight. Upon rewatching the film, it becomes glaringly obvious that Bruce Willis wears the exact same outfit, a blue shirt, a maroon sweater, and a brown tweed coat, for nearly the entire movie. This was a deeply intentional symbolic choice. Ghosts in Shyamalan's universe are trapped in loops, unaware of their state, repeating their routines. Malcolm is subconsciously wearing the clothes he had on the night he died. However, the costume department subtly varied the outfit throughout the film, sometimes removing the coat, other times losing the sweater. These minor tweaks were deliberately designed to trick the viewer's brain into thinking time was passing and his wardrobe was changing, effectively pulling off a brilliant visual magic trick that masked a massive narrative spoiler. Number 9. The delivery of "I see dead people" actually terrified the producers into thinking it would ruin the twist. While the studio was worried the line sounded cheesy, producer Frank Marshall had the exact opposite fear. During early screenings, Marshall realized that after Osment whispers the iconic line, the camera executes a very deliberate, slow push-in on the boy's face, eventually settling into a composition that perfectly frames Dr. Crow sitting right behind him. Marshall panicked, arguing to Shyamalan that lingering on the shot for even a second too long was practically screaming at the audience that Malcolm was one of those dead people. He begged the director to trim the shot or change the angle. Shyamalan stubbornly refused, trusting the audience's emotional engagement over their analytical instincts. He was right. Test audiences were so swept up in the moment that they never noticed the literal ghost staring them in the face. Number 8. The official soundtrack album almost spoiled